For today's video, we are going to create a JavaFX project in NetBeans. I'll show you how to design your JavaFX project using Scene Builder, and make sure you know how to set this up properly so every project you create yourself is successful. I'll show you how to set up NetBeans, the JavaFX libraries, and also set up the runtime. Our first project will be a text field. We've added extra code you can use to validate a text field for numbers only and limit the text entered length. To demonstrate the project, if you try to enter a letter, it will display an error message label at the bottom. If you try to exceed the length of numbers that can be entered, it will again display an error message label at the bottom. Okay, let's first get started by designing your project in Scene Builder. Open Scene Builder from the shortcut we created on the taskbar. Create a new empty document. Now in Scene Builder, this is where you designed all your library items, like your text boxes, your text, your labels, etc. This is where your library items are contained. This is where you'd search for your library items. We're going to start with an anchor plane. This is what everything will be placed on top of. Then we're going to enter in a text field. Type in text in the library search, drag a text field, and place this on the anchor pane. Now we're going to drag over a text. This is a prompt for the user to enter input. Go up to the library search, type in label, and drag a label over. The label is for error messaging for the end user. We can position these later. What we need to do next is open up NetBeans and then get the package name that we've created there and link it to Scene Builder. Minimize Scene Builder. Go down to NetBeans. Once NetBeans has loaded, we're going to start a new project. Go up to File, New Project, Java with Ant, Java Application. Then click on Next. Now give the project a name. We're going to call our project JavaFX TextField. Click on Finish. What we need in NetBeans at the moment is just the package name. The package name is just here. Double click on this name, press Ctrl C, minimize NetBeans, go back into Scene Builder, go across to the document section, down here where it says controller, paste this package name in the controller class, and then press dot. Later on, when we save this document, we'll actually add the document name into this controller class. The reason why we add this now is once you complete your project and you go to run your project, you'll get an error message from Java crashing if you haven't put in the package name in Scene Builder. It's a common mistake. Now we're actually going to do the layout in Scene Builder. Go over to the text here, which is a prompt for the user. Enter in under the text, enter number. You can change the actual font here. I'm going to change mine to 24. Just position this about here. And then I'm going to actually do the text input field and change that one to 24 as well. Actually a little bit too big. We'll make that 18. And now go down to the label. And with the label, we just want to actually expand this out a little bit so there's enough room to actually display our error message. Now go up to text name. Delete this. Go down to where it says alignment. Select center. This is so that any element here for the error message will be displayed in the middle. Place this in the center, anywhere you like. You can resize the anchor plane too by selecting it if you like. The label has disappeared. The reason why there's nothing displayed in it, you can always bring it up by clicking on the element over here. Now I'm going to also change the color for the text in the actual label. I'm going to make mine red. You can make yours whatever you like. Going to change the font. I'm going to make that 18. Actually 14 would be better. Now we need to set up the rest of the properties and the code for all our elements. So the first one we're going to do is a text field. Down here where it says code, click on the code. We need to give it an ID. This ID is what you reference when you're in NetBeans for the element itself. Start it with a lowercase text field input. For the purpose of this project, please use the same names that I use here. Now what we need to do is set up the keyboard input. What we need to do is down here where it says on key typed, scroll down, enter in, validate text field key typed, exactly as I've shown here. Next thing we need to do is on mouse click. On mouse click, enter in, text field clicked. I'll show you later in the code why we're using these two elements. Now what we need to do is actually change the name for the label. The text doesn't matter because we don't reference this. Click on your label over here. Go up to the top. Now, for the actual name, we'll call this label error message. Type in label error MSG. There's one more thing I like to do. For the actual text field, I like to actually set up the alignment for the entered text to be in the center. So go to properties, for the alignment, select center, but this is entirely up to you. Now we need to save the actual document. Go over to file. You can see I've already saved it. File, save as. Then what you want to do is browse to where you actually created the NetBeans project. Go into this folder. Go into the folder called SRC. Then go into the package name. You want to save this actual project as FXML controller. Then click on save. I'm going to replace mine. Obviously yours, you won't have to do that. Now that you've actually saved the project name, you need to put this back into the controller. Over here we actually copied the package name. We had the package name dot. What you want to enter at the end is this actual file name. FXML controller. Make sure this is all spelt correctly. Then once again, save this project. Save as. Save it over the top. Now you've set up Java to contain this actual project. Now we can go over and start on the coding. Minimize Scene Builder for now, in case you want to go back and change any elements. And then load up NetBeans. Now you'll see in our Java NetBeans project, the actual file that we created in Scene Builder, called FXML controller. The reason why we saved this in here to this actual project is so that any changes you make in Scene Builder will automatically be saved to this project. There's one more thing we need to do to set up NetBeans though, is to set up the JavaFX libraries that we created before in the last video. Go across to your JavaFX TextField project name, right click on this, left click on properties, go across to libraries, then add the module path that we created before in the last video. Click on plus, add library, scroll down to JavaFX, then click on add library. Now we need to add the class paths. Now once again, the reason why we installed these class paths for JavaFX in the last video to the Java folder is so that you have consistency So every time you create a new project, you'll find that you won't have to relink these paths every single time because they're all contained in the same folder. So click on plus, go to add jar folder. You can see I referenced these before, so I'll just scroll up. We installed it to C drive, program files, the Java folder. It's the same folder where Java itself is contained. Then click on the Java SDK, then the library. Now you want to highlight all of these libraries and then click on open. Now you've included all these libraries in your actual class paths. There's one more thing we need to do is set up the runtime. Go over to the runtime where you've got VM options. Now we want to enter in, I'll just get this for you. Has to be specific. --add -modules equals JavaFX .controls, JavaFX ML. Then click OK. Now we've actually set up Java with all the JavaFX links libraries. What we want to do now is actually create a new Java class file to link to the actual scene builder FXML. So go to your actual package name just here, right click on this, click on new, and then Java class. Then give this name, you can name it anything, but I'm going to call mine FXML controller, the same name. Click finish. Now what we want to do is go back to scene builder. Go up here where you've got view. Go down to show sample controller skeleton. Now this is everything you need to copy in itself. So copy all this. Click on copy. Minimize the scene builder in case we want to make some changes. Now you want to just basically paste this directly into your project. Now you see there's no errors coming up. If you find out you have some error messages coming up, they'll be underlined in red. That means that you haven't actually set the libraries up correctly. In our project, it's set up correctly. Now you want to just quickly save your project. So go up to File, and then Save. Now in this FXML controller class, you can see the actual FX IDs recreated in Scene Builder, the label error message, the text field input, and the events for mouse event, text field clicked, and validate text field key type for the key event, as signified in Scene Builder. For the actual text field, you can see the FX ID, the key type event, and the mouse click event. And for the label, you can see the FX ID, label error message. Now what we need to do is set up the main class so we can actually run this shell program without any validation yet, just to show that everything works correctly. Over here you'll see the actual main class, signified by the little green play button, JavaFX field.java. Double click on this. Now I'll just clean this up a little bit, take out what's at the top. Now what we want to do is just paste in the required code. Now rather than typing this all out, I'm just going to cut and paste. First of all, I'll copy over all the libraries that we require. Put these just underneath the package. It's just telling me at the moment we haven't used any of these libraries. Then for the main guts of the actual program, which we'll need to extend the application class. And I'll actually add in the comment, just to describe what this does. Oops, just there. Now there's just one extra little bit we need to add in, which is actually loading in here the FXML loader. the actual file name, FXML controller. So we'll just type in here FXML controller. This will load what we created in Scene Builder. This now completes the actual main class code. Now to explain this a little bit, the start of this project is right here, which is the main entry point for the JavaFX application, where it loads the actual FXML controller. It actually sets a scene and loads the actual main view that we've linked to the FXML controller. Right here, it's just basically giving the title to the actual project itself. And here we're actually staging the scene, and now we're showing the scene. And then down here in the main class, we actually launch the actual application. We can test this by clicking on the play button at the top. You can see here, we've got a text field that we created. At the moment, you're not going to show anything up in the label because we haven't written the code to address this as yet. But you can see now, we can enter in text and numbers. No validation is included yet because that text and numbers can be of any length. Next, we're going to add the code to enter in the validation for this text field. Now, there's one more thing I'd just like to show you. That is the FXML controller.fxml code. Now remember in Scene Builder where I told you to actually set up the package name, that's actually in the code just here, as well as the actual file name. Now let's move on and actually set up the error correction for the text field so it only accepts numeric numbers and also has a fixed length and also displays an error message in the actual label at the bottom. Go over to the actual package name. Now there are two more Java class files we need to create. On the actual package name, right click, click on New, and then click on Java class. Call this first class name error message. Now I'll just clean this up a little bit and then I'll paste in the code rather than typing it all in, and I'll explain the code. Now this Java class is used to define the object which is returned from the validation class. It contains in this object two things, a boolean error and a string error message. The boolean error, if the actual text that's entered is not a valid number, the error will be true and then it will display the error message. If it's false, then it's actually valid. It also contains a constructor which is used purely to define the actual class validation. It also has a constructor which is used to actually set the error boolean and the error message. And it has two getters, which is retrieve the error, the boolean, and the error message. Now we're actually going to create the validation class. Go over to actual package name, right click, left click on Java class, then type in validate text field, exactly how it's spelled here. Then click on finish. Now I'm just going to paste in the code again rather than typing it all out because it's quite lengthy. Make sure it's done underneath the package name and just clean up the top. And just clean up the source. Now, just remove this output again. Now, just to go over the code. Basically here I'm recording the Caret position for the cursor. What I mean by that is in the actual text field, wherever you click or whenever you actually enter in text, I'm recording the current position of the cursor. The reason why I do this is so it's seamless to the actual end user, so if they delete, or they go over here and they delete, the cursor position will always stay the same when we modify this string. So I record that beforehand, I record that afterwards, after we've done the actual string manipulation, and also record the actual text contents in that field. just in case they paste something, so we can return it back to what it was previously. So I don't allow the paste as well, because that'll exceed the actual length that we fix. Now these are all set to defaults. Then I have a couple of static variables here, which are actually final, meaning they can't be changed. Static means they're actually shared for all instances of this class. Basically we've got the char codes, we're storing a backspace, control, del and enter. So these are all the things that I'm allowing through. I'm not allowing the control V though. Now down here in the main method, you can see here the error message object, which is what we declared here. This is what's returned from this actual method itself. This is the beauty about object-oriented programming. We're actually passing in any text field, so you can use this for multiple instances of any multiple text fields that you may have. We're actually passing in the key event, so the event for what we typed into the keyboard, and also what you stipulate as being the maximum length that you can type into this text field itself. Now initialize the returns for the error message and for the error. Down here we're actually getting the char out of the actual keyboard input. I'll just remove this output again. Now in here I've got a couple of booleans. Now basically what they do is, if you think about it here, they basically just replace the conditions that are down here in the if statements themselves. It just makes it look a lot more neater and a lot easier to read by placing these right here. So the first one is for the paste key, which will prevent from happening. The next one's for invalid keys. So basically if it's not an actual digit, we don't allow that to, we actually perform a string manipulation. But we do allow a backspace, a del, enter, and anything else in the control keys, meaning control C you can actually copy. Down here we actually set the current cursor position from the given text field that you've passed through. And here we actually have a try catch. This is just in case if something goes wrong, your program won't crash. It'll just give an error message out in that label that we positioned at the bottom. The next thing here is inside here, if you try and use the paste key, we set the error boolean to true, and we actually set the error message, which is paste not allowed. Here we basically just set the text field contents back to the old contents, so we reset it back. I've got some nice comments in here. And here we just position the caret back to the old position. So once they try and paste, we just put it back to the original before the paste itself. Else, if it's not a paste, if it is an invalid key, then we're basically replacing whatever is typed in here, and then we're setting the error message true again, and we're putting in the error message, which is input must be a number. Then we paste back this manipulated where we've removed from the string the inputted invalid key, and then I basically position the caret back to where it was, less one position, because we've actually removed that extra character that was invalid typed in. This is where we check for the actual length of the actual text field itself. So we get the text length out of the field, and if that's greater than the actual what you stipulated here in your past method, right up here, then we know that we've exceeded the actual length that you've stipulated. And then what I do here is I get the actual string again from the text field, and this is to remove that extra character that we're not going to allow, even though it's valid. It just exceeds the length. We set the error message again, max number input to whatever you've passed through. And down here we're using a string builder object to basically remove at that position that you've actually, which is a cursor position -1, just remove that character. That's just in case they click anywhere. So once again I'll demonstrate. That's just in case if I click in here and they enter in and exceed the length, it'll always see seamless to the user. So it'll just look like it's a normal input. Down here we basically, we put back the actual string itself. So the manipulated string here that we set for the limit, we just paste that back into the text field. So that just looks seamless. So if they exceeded the length, let's say, then basically what that'll do is remove that extra character and then paste that back into this text field. And here we put the caret back to the same position again, so once again it seems seamless for the actual user. Down here are the variables that we use in case we need to paste back. So if we actually use the paste key, the old text field, we declare that down here, so we actually store that beforehand. And we also store the, we set here with our setters, we actually set the actual old text field, the text field caret position. And then we return the object for the error boolean and the error message. And this is the exemption that I mentioned before. Now down here, I've got a couple of getters. This is get the old caret position, which we'll use, and set the old caret position, which we used in here as well. Now there's a couple of extra things that we need to do. Now I'll just show you part of the code so you can sort of have a look. But if you actually subscribe and then go to my website and subscribe there for my updates, I can send you this code for free. Okay, and down here, we'll just scroll down here so you can see the rest of the code. And then the last bit here, which is just the last bit of enter. Okay, and also you'll also get all the any extra projects that I create in the future. There is a couple more with this validation that I'm going to show you with a calculator. Okay, now there's a couple more things we need to do, because obviously you can see here when we actually run the program, this is not actually doing anything yet. So what we need to do is go over to our FXML controller.java, and in here, this is where we actually declare the objects that we created here for validate text, the object for the return, which you only need to do once, and then here we actually stipulate how wide we want the text input to be, etc, etc. Okay, now I'm going to run through this. Okay, now for the final part, we're just going to insert a little bit of code into here, which is, and will be a method down here as well, which will be to display to this label. There isn't much to do in this bit, but I'm going to still paste it in because I think it's better for me to just explain to you the code rather than you just watching me type. And okay, first things first, I like to comment my code. So I'm just going to add a comment in here. Now we're actually going to declare a variable for the maximum text length that you can enter, and also just set up the objects for the return and an object for the text field input. Obviously you'd only need one of these because the return's the same for each object you create, but if you had multiple text fields, you'd declare multiple objects of the actual validate text field. So to explain this, I'll first of all insert the code for variable and objects. Just copy that from over here. Okay, clean this up a bit. If you ever want to clean your code up, source and then format, it'll put it back into the Java conventions. Now up here we've got a static, basically it only exists once. Final, meaning it not going to change. This is the actual text length that you can, or in this case it's going to be a number, the maximum length that the user can enter. Now if you had multiple text fields and you want different lengths, then obviously just declare multiple different variables of this itself. Down here we have the object that we create. This is the object for the validate text field, which is up here. So for this class we create an object. Now this is used for each text field that you might want to use. So if you have multiple text fields, you'll need to declare a new object for each text field. The reason why is you want to record the different caret cursor positions for each, and obviously the inputs are going to be different as well for each itself. But for the error message return, that's always the same. So basically, because that's only done once you've called this actual object itself, so you only need to declare one instance of this. Now the first bit of code that we need to put in is text field clicked. So meaning if they actually go in, to demonstrate, if they go into here and they click over here and then we do something there where we have to remove an invalid key, we've recorded where the actual user clicked, so we can return it back to exactly the same point. Once again, so it seems seamless to the end user. So I'll just insert the code there. I'll just copy that from over here. Just clean it up a little bit. Go to source, format. Now there's one method here that we haven't declared yet. This is simply the output that we display to the error message label. I like to create a method rather than just calling this directly because it just looks a lot easier when you read the code. So I'll just insert this method at the end, just down here. Clean the code up again.
Now, you could just call this directly and use this, but I like to do it this way because it just looks a lot easier when you use this method multiple times. Now, this is for the text field click. Basically what happens here is when you actually run the program, if a user enters something incorrect, obviously we'll remove that. We'll display an error message down the bottom. But when they go to type something else or when they go to click something else, we want to remove that previous error message because the user's already noted that and they're entering something else. Just looks better for the end user experience. So I've just cleared out that display there for that label. Now down here we're basically just setting the current caret position, recording that. So when we're inside that text field and we clicked, we're recording the current caret position itself. So into our actual variables in here. So we're setting the actual current caret position, calling down here. Okay, now go back to the code. Next part we need to do is the actual main engine, which is for validating the text field input. This is the last bit of code that we need. Okay, I'll just copy this over. I'll just paste this in here. And once again, I'll just clean it up. Now, once again, obviously, every time the user types in a character, we just want to clear that error message first before we validate the actual code. The input. Now down here we actually set up the object. So what we're doing here is for the object we've created, we're making that equal to the return from this validation class itself. Now the final bit of code to explain here is a simple little if statement which looks at the object that we've declared up here. Basically it's seeing if there is an error contained inside this object that's this boolean set to true, then display to this label at the bottom the actual error message that we've stored in here, that we've passed from the validate text field back into the object here itself. Now to demonstrate the actual program, we'll run the program here. Now basically it's saying, enter a number. So if we try and enter in a letter, it's going to prevent us from entering that letter and display an error message in the label down here. If we actually enter in valid numbers and then try to exceed the actual length, it'll actually display an error message down the bottom here. That will set up the top here. You can change that to whatever you like. Now if you actually click inside the field in a different spot, it'll remove this error message label. If you delete, it'll work correctly. And if you try and enter a letter again, it'll prevent you from entering a letter. And then if you enter in your digits again, it'll also limit the actual text, the digit length as well. Now if you highlight the whole thing, you can delete it, and then you can start typing in again. You can actually backspace inside the actual input that you've put in, and you can also delete the input as well. So to the end user, it seems seamless and it all works correctly. Once again, don't forget to subscribe down the bottom or at the end of this video. And if you'd like to get all the code, go over to my website at the link at the bottom and subscribe to my website as well, and I'll send you out the code. Now for our next project, we're going to create a calculator. I'll just go to the source code here and open up the main class and run this project. This calculator is going to incorporate an image in the background. We're going to have buttons here. We're going to have extra error messaging, and basically because this is displaying because there's nothing in the actual number. And the extra validation we're going to have this time is for floating point numbers. So if you put in a decimal and then you try and input a decimal again, it won't allow you to input that. And the extra thing we're going to do as well in our output label here is we're also going to enter in commas for every 3 zeros. I look forward to showing you this next project. Don't forget to subscribe at the bottom. Thank you and see you then.